Okay, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning and good evening for those who are joining in from other time zones. I would like to welcome everyone to the new episode of Tech Recruiting Academy and to tell what it is going to be about today. So, we will be really discussing a critical challenge some organizations are facing, and it is about crafting an employer brand that not only attracts but also retains tech talent. Today, I am here with Alexandra and Yelena to explore what it truly means to build an employer brand that resonates with the tech talent, with the tech community on a deeper level, one that goes beyond flashy slogans, trendy perks, etc. Before we start, I would like to also encourage you to engage with our panelists and to use the Q&A section that is on the right. I will make sure that I either ask those questions during the discussion or I leave like 10 minutes at the end so that you can get some more insights. Not only questions, of course, also comments are welcome. And yeah, let's start. Okay, one more thing before we start. I just want to make sure that I also cover the code of conduct. Make sure that you are nice to each other when you're writing in the chat. Use inclusive language. And ladies, welcome. I'd ask each of you to introduce yourself and a little bit of your experience in the context of employer branding so that the audience can have a better understanding about where you are, what you bring to the table today, etc.
Thank you. Alexandra, do you want to start?
Sure, why not? Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra. I've been working for WeAreDevelopers now since pretty much exactly a year. I had the wonderful challenge here building up the people and culture, or as some still call it, HR from scratch, like operations, basically everything, administration processes was a really cool thing. And now also facing the challenge of building up employer branding from scratch. Of course, that was not the first priority when I started, but I do have some background experience from my previous employer about creating an employer brand. And I'm very excited to build it up from scratch here, actually, in the second half of this year. Yeah, that's about me.
Thank you, Alexandra. Yelena, just go ahead. I mean, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for the invitation. Greetings from Zagreb, Croatia. So my name is Jelena, and I'm organizational psychologist. I have more than 19 years of experience working either in HR or even specialized in employer branding. My last position was at IT startup called Photomat from Croatia. This is actually a success story from Croatia because Google bought the company last year, and I worked there as employer brand manager. Basically, my role was to help company position as a great place to work for tech talent, especially senior engineers. So last year, I actually started my own company, the consulting business specialized in HR and employer branding. And yeah, about my free time and volunteering, I'm also very involved in tech community in Croatia. I'm the founder of Engineering Management Meetup here, and also currently conducting a research on what developers really want from employers. And I'm happy to share some results and insights that we already have from the survey.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you, but you already were a little bit ahead of me. Thank you, Elena. I want to start with something that is simple, but it's actually underrated according to my experience. What is your own personal definition of employer branding? I've heard so many, and also if you go deeper into where does it sit in one organization? Who is owning it? Is it marketing? Is it HR? Is it CEO? How is it? How does it look like from a high level perspective?
Okay, I would maybe start with defining what is employer brand, what a brand is. So it's basically the reputation or the popularity that the company has as employer. And employer branding is about activities that we do or take in order to promote the brand with the target audience. So the purpose of employer branding is actually to position the company as a great place to work. And we usually use it in the communications towards candidates or our future or potential employees, and also with the current employees. And about where it sits in the organization, I really didn't find the right answer. Also from my practice, I've seen everything. Either it sits in HR, either it sits in marketing, and sometimes that's the case in Croatia that I usually see. The scope and responsibilities are split between those two departments. But in my opinion, the most important thing here is actually that those two departments, HR and marketing, are really closely collaborating on the employer branding efforts. And as you mentioned, CEO, definitely we cannot do it without the buy-in, the active involvement and participation from the C-level executives. And also, we should not forget the employees, because they are the best ambassadors one company can imagine.
I like this message, actually, that it sits with your employees, like it or not. You have to take care and to make sure that you know that they are one of the stakeholders, actually, the most important stakeholder.
The most important one, because I really like the simple definition of the brand in general, which says the brand is what people talk about you when you're not in the room. So in the context of employer branding, it's actually what your employees or previous former employees or even candidates that went through your hiring process, it's what they talk about the company as a place to work. And this is why we really have to care about, you know, what they think, what they talk about us, what they how they perceive the company. And we cannot control that perception, but we can definitely influence this at least a little bit.
It feels like a homework. Alexandra, would you like to add something to this? I'm pretty sure you want to.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with Jelena here. In my experience, it's also depending a lot on how big the company is. I mean, the smaller the company, the more, especially HR or people in culture, however we call it, the more generalistic these positions are. So probably there is one person taking care of all the strategic decisions and implementations or development of those things. Like in my case, we are among 60 people now. So that will be definitely something which is mostly on me. Of course, in collaboration with marketing and with everyone. This is very important to understand what's going on in the company, building first the internal employer brand before communicating it externally. But I think we're coming later back to that. But the bigger the company is, the more likely it is that they have an own employer branding department, even sometimes with multiple people taking care only about those kind of initiatives from a strategically but also operational point of view, because this is still both, it's strategically and operational. So yeah, I think this is what I wanted to add. And in my previous experience, also when we're developing the employer brand, we were working closely together, especially with the tech leads, with some specific people from the tech department, make it more authentic, to really also have this perspective from the tech people to involve that, especially when we are talking about a tech employer brand.
Yeah, I mean, we are developers, so we talk about tech, definitely. And I have the feeling that tech talent is often have some unique priorities and some preferences. What are some common characteristics or, like, I don't know, values you've observed in the tech professionals that influence their choice of employer, or that influences them when they want to change their job? To you, I mean, you mentioned some data, Jelena. I don't know whether that's the right moment for it, but if it is not data, just go ahead and share your experience, please.
Yes. Just can you see my screen now?
No, you are not.
Okay, then we will ask Nico to share it with everyone.
Okay, good.
Let me know when you see it.
Yes. Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay, so this is one part of the current research that we're conducting in Croatia. It's still ongoing, as I mentioned before, but we do already have more than 200 responses, which is pretty, a good sample to drive some insights from. So we asked, the target audience is actually the software engineers or developers, programmers, in general tech community. We asked them, what are some characteristics of ideal employer? What would attract you to the company? And you can see here the percentage of people who chose each factor or each element. So on the top of the list, we all know it's always base pay, the salary that we get for the work done. But very, very close to that is flexible working condition, meaning that people have opportunities to work from home, work remotely, and also that the working hours are flexible. Also, a lot of people expect respect for its people, which was really, the third factor. It was a bit surprising for me because obviously some companies are not offering that, or people do not feel respected. Also, what they really care for and like is when the company encourages the work-life balance, and it goes hand with hand with the flexible working conditions that we already mentioned before. And we can go on through that list, but you can see friendly work environment, clear path for advancement, professional training and then development, and so on. Besides those factors that will attract the tech talent to the company, we also wanted to learn more about what will make people stay with the company, or what would trigger them to leave the company, to join some other company. Most of the factors are the same on both sides, the stay and the leave sides. But we can see that on the top of the stay factors, people really care about their team, about their colleagues, even sometimes friends from work. Again, we can see that flexible working hours and remote work are on the top of that list. On the right side, the leave factors, if people are not satisfied with the pay, or with the top management, or with career advancement, these are the top 3 factors contributing to their decision to leave the company.
Okay, alert to all the CEOs who are listening to us, or who will be listening, or who are managing tech teams.
I always suggest here, this is really a good and solid argument why you should invest in your management development, because the top management and also the line managers are actually one of the key factors that make people stay or leave the company. If the management style and is good, is the kind of that people feel they're building the human environment, they're treated like a human, like a unique individual, not like a number that is easily replaced, then they're more likely to be engaged and stay with the company. And also, we all know what bad management can do to a culture. And from my previous research, we did have some findings that say that number 1 or 2 factor that make people frustrated and dissatisfied with the work is actually when they feel that the company does not care for them as individual, as a human.
You mentioned that this survey is based on Croatian developers' feedback.
Yes.
Alexandra, I know that at WeAreDevelopers, we also have a survey that is covering Europe, but you are mostly working when it comes to developers, you're mostly focusing on, let's say, DACH region. Does it overlap what you just heard from Jelena? What is your experience? Is there anything else that is important for the developers, or are they the same? What's your feeling?
Absolutely. I think that's quite overlapping here from the results of Jelena. Our newest survey is just right now in the production and will be actually available also to our audience quite soon. So there is definitely similarities, or more than that, it's like a lot of overlapping. What I also am experiencing is from my personal past experience is that definitely the team is not to be underestimated. We are very lucky in WeAreDevelopers, especially our tech team is actually quite representable, I would say, because we just enlarged it. We added some people, but before that, our retention in the tech team was between 3 and 6 years. The youngest team member is already in the company for more than 3 years. So that's quite a high retention in especially this team, like no other team. There's literally no fluctuation. There was no fluctuation in the last 3 years, and I think that's making them even more sticking together, more performance, but also less likely to leave because there's such a wonderful team here. And what I also from my past experience from before of WeAreDevelopers could also see is that it was always very important to see the team or to meet the team before, like in the interviewing process, while you are getting to know a candidate before even offering. Make the possibility to meet the team, because this is so important to see how the team collaborates and the chemistry and if it's there, because this is also something which you cannot learn. It's not a hard skill. You cannot train it. It's either chemistry and it works, or it's not. So it's even more important in the decision-making process that it is a cultural fit here.
And maybe also a constant work related to transparency and to building trust and making this whole machine working together. Okay, Alexandra, back to your comment about the communication. I think it's time for it now. How do companies communicate their employer brand to like prospective tech talent or even internally? And which one is actually more important? Is it the internal brand, or is it the external one? Do they fit together? Do they come together? How is it according to your experience?
That's a very good question, and I would answer it with definitely the internal employer branding is the most important, where you also need to start. Like when I look at my plan on how to build this employer brand from scratch at WeAreDevelopers, because we are still quite young, still this startup driven company in the cultural perspective. I would definitely need to define the employer value proposition first, because I cannot communicate something I don't know yet. And one of the most important keys in employer branding, in my opinion, is authenticity. I think having an example from the food industry will make it more understandable. If you buy some protein bar and it's labeled sugar-free, and then you buy it and you find out, hey, there is actually a ton of sugar inside, you'll be disappointed. So the communication about the brand was simply not true. So this is also something we can adapt in employer brand. Find out the internal, or define, as I mentioned, the employer value proposition. This means the culture, understanding the audience, understanding who are we hiring, what do we need, understanding, but also the needs of the people inside, understanding the people inside. And from that on, you can, of course, this is also very important to align with the business goals, then in the second part, but then in the third step, only creating the strong brand message to the external audience. But understanding the internal, the status quo is the most important thing here before you can go into the communication. Without that, it will simply not be authentic. And then you can, of course, communicate all kinds of things that we are like that and that and that, but then people start, or maybe in the interviewing process, they're like, okay, but it's not like that. So that will just lead to disappointment, and that's nothing we want. I mean, the goal
alignment is crucial in this case.
Exactly. So definitely the internal one is key. And once you go into the external message, you also have to live it. You have to live it every day. I think that's also very important here when you talk about employer branding. It's not just defining something which sounds super fancy and nice. You also have to live it every day, and then constantly monitor and adapt it. So employer branding is not just something we are doing once and then that's it. It's something you have to live constantly.
Thank you, Alexandra. Jelena, I see that there is a question in the section, in the Q&A section, but I will first leave you to contribute to what Alexandra already outlined and to share your experience, and then we can maybe go ahead and answer some of the questions that already have been have already been in the chat.
Yeah, I can totally agree here with Alexandra. I think that every employer branding effort should start internally, because it's all about delivering on the promise, the EVP, the brand who you want to build and present. It's actually what you promised your people. So I start every project either as an internal employer branding person, or now as consultant. I start every project from the inside by serving or talking to people who are current employees and ensuring that we fully understand what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the company as employer. We can use, focus group interviews. We can use employee surveys. For example, I would always recommend that each company has its measure on Net Promoter Score. That is the question on how likely are you to promote the company as a place to work to your friends and family. And you can track that in time and see, are you getting better or worse, or staying at the same place. But I can totally agree also that if the promise it's not delivered to employees, to people, that people will be dissatisfied, they will be frustrated, and that's why we have the highest attrition rates during the onboarding periods. So in the first 6 months of employment, most people will leave the company if the promise is not aligned to what they expected before joining the company, and also maybe I can extend this to external communication. So after we fully work on employer brand internally and communicate, and also align the experience of people that they have every day with the company, then we are probably only then are we ready to start the external communications. We already know what our tech talents finds important, what matters to them, what are the things they consider when joining the company. Then as on the second place, we should consider which channels or which communications touch points should we use to promote the brand. And when we talk about tech talent or developers, I would always suggest starting with your career site, with your social media, especially LinkedIn. But don't forget your employees as ambassadors. So you can train them to be advocates or ambassadors of the brand. You can also start or initiate employee referral program, so that your current employees can actually refer their friends or colleagues for open positions. And maybe a few other things that were pretty successful in my experience, in my previous practices, was writing engineering or tech blogs, and also engaging employees as speakers at various tech events, such as meetups, such as conferences, and things like that.
Yeah, you developed them. I think I saw clear career paths on one of your slides.
Yeah.
That is one of the reasons for them to stay. I mean, there is a challenging question, and I'll ask it, ladies. I mean, I know it's difficult, but how do you handle bad reviews about your company culture or work environment on like social media? And how does this affect your reputation among tech professionals, but also maybe internally is what I will add. I don't know who wants to speak first, but we are all curious about the answer.
That's definitely a very good question, and quite challenging one, I would say. But I think we all know, of course, reviews are important, not to be discussed, but we also know that people are more likely to review something if they are unhappy. So that's always a bit this finding the right balance between giving it attention, of course, but how much attention will give to them, and how you handle them. I'm a big fan of transparent communication and also reacting to those kind of reviews. I think most of the review platforms now offer that anyway, and I started doing that. I'm not there yet because of other prioritizations where I want to develop it at some point, but it's always important to also stay transparent here and react to that. So the candidate or the potential candidate sees, okay, the company does care. And what I also more and more see in the candidates is that it's kind of a trend. It's just a gut feeling here, but also from my personal surroundings, that indeed it's not that much trusted anymore, because reviews can be faked super easily, especially Kununu. You can leave 3, 4, 5 reviews as one person, and it's just appearing there. So it's not always to be trusted. And I see that a lot of people are also starting to think like that. Those who read it, they're usually asking it in the interviewing process and say, hey, I read this community reviews. What do you say about that? So I was confronted with that a lot in actually all my HR experiences so far. So not just at WeAreDevelopers, but also before, on a regular basis. And it's also important to stay here authentic and say, yeah, of course, I mean, there are some problems, but we are doing that and that and that measures. But at the same time, also not overrating it, because, as I mentioned, people are more likely to focus on negative things and then to really evaluate the negative things more than than the positive things, unfortunately. So this is a measure you can do, even though it's you're actually legally not allowed to say, hey, please review our company, but you can do some measures so that people want to do that. Like, hey, please share, how are you feeling about us? Maybe you also want to share it in some networks. That could work. Yeah, so I think
being brave and addressing it directly with the applicants. I mean, it's not the most exciting thing for an HR person, but it is one of the most important things to take care of. Because we talked about the brand, and you will tell us a little bit later about how you build it from scratch. But basically, the brand exists, like it or not, whether you influence it or not, it is there. Your employees are creating it. And the question is, do you want to be in control? Do you want to kind of take the lead of building this employer brand, or do you want to let go and just respond reactively, etc., to messages? Jelena, I don't know whether you will add something as a consultant from your consulting experience or as an internal HR, because I know that you also had some experience as such in the past, but I just don't remember when was it and were social media by that time that that much used by the applicants.
In the previous past years, the employer review sites are really on the rise, and I think a lot of candidates are actually, it's one of the go places where they also search for some additional information. It's not maybe the main point of information, but definitely one of the touch points where they go to learn more about employers. And I did also face some situations where, as in-house HR or employer branding person, we saw bad reviews, bad comments on companies, on candidate experience, on the hiring process, things like that. But in my opinion, it's really important to be proactive, to answer, to respond to every or most of the comments, to thank for the feedback, to really show what we are doing. If the comment is not valid, maybe it's just haters comments, then to give some tangible examples of initiatives, of processes, of practices that we have that goes against it. How actually to give some proactive arguments why is this not true. But if it is true, then really think about the feedback and use it as a source of learning about how we are perceived. I mean, it's actually, if you analyze the ratings and the reviews on the career sites, also from the social media, you can learn a lot about what people are talking about, what people like or dislike with regarding certain company. And I think that we as HR or employer branding professionals can really use those data to extract some insights and to learn how we can deal with those matters. But definitely one of the worst strategies would be just to ignore it. I don't say that we have to respond to each and every comment, but if you have some arguments, if you have some examples, what the company is working to increase something, to improve something, to enhance something that is being talked negatively or badly in the comment, I would definitely use those arguments to start the dialogue, to just show that we care and that we see and value the comments from the candidates or potential candidates.
Yeah, great discussion. It's not me, although I also think that it's a great discussion because you both are very honest and you give examples. It is from Bernadette. And there's a question attached to this comment. If you have powerful employer branding, should you communicate with the candidate from the get-to-go that their expectations are too high when it comes to salary, or should you leave it to the last step and offer a smaller salary and then explain it in the context of the company? So how would you
if I may, I like that question, and I've been facing that problem a couple of times in the past as well. I mean, one big point, of course, I think we have 2 more years to adapt to the salary transparency framework of the European Union. So I think that will definitely create more transparency here also in budgets, because we all will be obligated. Not just Austria already has it as a law, but also the rest of the European Union will be obligated to put salaries in a job ad. So that will already maybe solve some problems from the one perspective. So I also recommend, if you can, put the salary, or the best thing is to put a salary range into the job ad, so that people already know before. And about your question, Bernadette, it always depends a bit on what the discrepancy is between your budget and the salary expectation. If, I don't know, I just saying an example, if you have for a tech role, let's say 70,000 K a year for that one specific role, and you have a candidate who is already expecting more than 100K, the discrepancy might be too high. So maybe just have a first short conversation and talk to the candidate. Hey, we have a good impression for you, but I already have to tell you, it's way out of scope, your salary experience, also to save your time and the candidate's time. Maybe he's not that strict, he just tried it in some way. But if the difference is a smaller one, like, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 K a year, you can still go through the process. And I experienced it very often that then in the end, benefits made the decision, even though it was less salary than the candidate expected, that because of great benefits in flexibility, in how you work, or some other topics, the candidate might still decide for that. And there's, of course, also some possibilities to point that out, to communicate them super transparently. But also, if there is a possibility to say, hey, we have yearly salary rounds in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, whatever is possible, we can already talk about a raise. Maybe this is already enough for the candidate
Good
to
point.
and say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to also share some data. It's from WeAreDevelopers, but I work here, so I don't have other data. And for those of us who know us, for people from our community, we also offer career opportunities for developers. And one of my observations when it comes to job ads is that jobs with with a salary range announced on it, they create 5 times more traction. So five times more people will click on this job. I mean, it's not necessarily true that they will apply, but they will review it thoroughly. So that's also something that is to be considered by the companies, because it's not ultimately about the transparency of the salary. It's about the transparency of the culture of the company.
Yeah. In Croatia, I can see the trend the last few years that most tech companies are starting to, reveal the salary range already in the job advertisement. And the community is already so used to it that when they see the job ad without it, they very openly comment it online. Like, I'm not going to even try and bother with this job ad. I'm not going to engage with it. I'm not even trying to get into the hiring process because there is no salary. First of all, I'm not sure if I will get the amount that I expect. And second of all, as you said, Anna, it's about culture. If they're not transparent enough to share the salary range with the candidates, people think or perceive that company as not transparent, even internally, And that is a big no-no.
Yeah, this is how we create your brand, actually. Maybe it's not even true, but you don't deal with
part of the branding, definitely.
Okay. Jelena, one more question to you, and it is about authenticity and transparency. Can you share some examples of organizations that have successfully demonstrated both authenticity and transparency in their employer branding efforts? I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, you may not share the name of the company, but a real example would really help us to understand.
Okay. I do have some names, but I will also share some, general remarks and examples that I saw are working or not working. So for concrete names and examples of the companies, I would here share maybe Deutsche Bahn, which is really a great example because the company is not only sharing the positive aspects of working there, but also encouraging employees, to talk about the challenges that they face in their daily work. So it's again back to EVP and who we are as employers, and starting from within and knowing our strengths and weaknesses as employer, and being so transparent and okay with that to share it, not only internally, but also with external talent and external market, because we actually want to engage and attract the talent that will say, hey, but I really like those strengths and those pluses and benefits of working there much more than the challenges. I can totally, manage the challenges. And that's really a good example of authenticity and being
Confidence is what I'm hearing.
Confidence. Because the point of employer branding is not to attract everyone. You actually, we want it to act as a magnet of talent to our company. But on the other hand, we also want it to, reject in a way some candidates that would not thrive here because it's not the right environment, it's not the right culture. They're searching and looking for something different. And we want to be transparent and say, hey, but this is not a place to work for you. Maybe we're not the best choice or the best fit for each other. And about transparency, I was thinking about the question, and what came to my mind was actually the time of crisis, the corona pandemic all over the world, the global pandemic that we all faced and went through. I think a lot of companies showed their real face during that time, because some of them were just, laying off people right the first moment the crisis hit. But on the other hand, some dealt it much more human. Some really used open and transparent and timely communications, both internally but also on external channels. And it was all about how you treated people in those very heavy and difficult moments. Did you treated them with respect, with dignity as human beings, or did you just thought about how we can, save on the budget and how we can cut off everything that is not necessary at the moment? So we do have some regional great examples of companies who had to lay off people, but they did it in such a good, transparent way, such a human, with a human touch, if I may say that nobody, both from inside or from the talent market, nobody saw that as, a big bad event, because what mattered more in this situation, how the leadership team and the company treated people, and not what they had to do because of the crisis.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you, Elena. It's really interesting and important to go there with some bravery, especially when things are not going well. When it's business, but it's also humanity. How do we bridge the two of them? So maybe that's the employer brand ultimately. Alexandra, I have also a question that is dedicated to you. I know that you have a very difficult task in front of you, and that's to build the employer brand from scratch, whatever it means. So tell me more about it. How do you want to approach it, and what's the major challenges, or like go in whichever direction you would like to go to answer this question, please?
Well, I would not say it's difficult, because I don't have that kind of mindset. I don't want to create problems where there are. So for me, it's not difficult. For me, it's a big challenge. Of course, there might not be everything perfect from the start, and they need adaptation, but I will learn and grow. And not just me, but also the company will learn along the way. It's, I think, always a learning process and a development process about that. So I see it as a challenge. Actually excited, not difficult. But I think I already mentioned a few things, like just repeating here probably, that I will definitely start with the internal analyzation, creating an employer value proposition, also looking into business goals and saying, hey, who is my target audience? Who I'm going to hire in the next 6 to 12 months in the middle perspective? Understanding this audience, understanding the departure more and more into depth, the culture, of course, this is always also a constant process. Cultural shaping is always also how you live it. And then from that, I can still just go on then. And how I find that out is, of course, through talking to people, and also surveys to have more anonymous feedback, because I think this is also crucial, that sometimes people, they would not say anything because they're like, I don't know, kind of a bit scared. But once you put some anonymous mask over it, people are more likely to tell you more and to tell it more authentic. So this is the way how I will start it, like analyze it. Also very important here to align with the business goals and the need of the future, of course. And out of that, creating strong brand messages to communicate to the outside, but also creating values, creating purpose. I think purpose is a very important word nowadays, because especially the younger generation is looking for purpose. And actually, including myself, I'm not sure if from the social
That's the youngest generation.
Purpose is what gives me drive, and I think this is also something which should be aligned in the brand message. And then, of course, optimizing communication, analyzing communication channels. Where do I communicate it? How do I communicate it? Optimize the online presence, adapting it to social media. I think this is also a trend we can see on Instagram and even TikTok, that more and more companies are trying here or want to show the world how is it working for us, and they are creating videos and bringing the message outside. Not sure if it's always authentic, how some companies are always want to be perceived from the outside, but this is something I, for myself, can say it's super, super important for me, being as authentic as possible. And then again, just repeating myself here, I guess, living it every day, living it, monitoring it and adapting it. Maybe the needs change. Maybe we're having a strong focus on hiring sales at some point. Then, of course, the employer brand might be completely different than for the IT culture. But nevertheless, adapting it, monitoring it, but not changing it too much. I think the core message is not to be changed, but how you communicate depending on the target audience. We know that from marketing. This is, I think, also why the strong collaboration here is between marketing and HR, because it is marketing what we're doing here. It is marketing for our
Yeah. So some KPIs, Alexandra, that you will consider in order to measure to what extent it is successful. Do you have something in mind? And then, Elena, I will also ask you to share your experience when it. I mean, we are HRs. We work with a lot of KPIs. So what makes sense here?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I do have my plan, my rough plan on a high level, but not into deep yet, to be very honest about that. I have already thought about KPIs in that regard. But of course, the Net Promoter Score, Jelena also mentioned, I do have some experience with that as well. This is something you can monitor also on a constant basis, because in the end, our employees are the ambassadors, always. It's always like that. So that's actually the only KPI I was thinking about, to be very honest here. If you ask me now about recruiting KPIs or other HR KPIs, I would be able to give a more extended answer, but for now I have to stick with that. But probably Jelena has much more experience with that.
But Alexandra, I would totally agree that this is the excellent first KPI, and one of the most important. Is actually one I would always suggest, to use either. I mean, when we choose the way we want to measure employer branding efforts and the KPIs, it always depends. Are we more focused on internal brand engagement, meaning engaging people and retaining our current employees, or is our focus more currently on the outside, meaning attracting talent? So as Alexandra said, EMPS or Employee Net Promoter Score is perfect measure of internal engagement, and maybe I would extend it or add to that referral rate, because we want to measure, the percentage of people who came through referrals of our current employees. This is also a great example of employer branding metrics. If our focus is more on recruitment, on attracting talent, then we can use some of the recruitment metrics, such as time to hire, cost of hire, or quality of the candidates. I mean, there are many more. You can also track, what is happening with your career site, what is happening with the engagement on social media. But I would maybe start with those internally, EMPS, externally, some recruitment metrics that is the most important for the company.
I like the focus. We don't get lost into KPIs, but we just focus on what is the most important. And then if this works, you can always add on something.
Sure.
Okay, so I just check there are no more questions in the Q&A section. So I have the opportunity to ask you one more. How do you ladies think that remote work and distributed teams are impacting employer brand when it comes to the tech industry, of course?
Okay, then I just go on. I think it is still an underestimated benefit here, that a lot of companies, we see that trend in actually a lot of companies, that they are basically taking back the flexibility, making people come more to the office, like being a bit more stricter with the hybrid model, as especially after COVID, it was quite more flexible and people got used to it. So it's also, how do you communicate it? And I'm always a big fan of make the office as attractive as possible, that people want to come. And that's always will be my perspective about that. And I do think, especially when it comes to tech talent, it's very, or it loses, company lose a bit focus, because we know from researchers that productivity, especially in the tech department, is not going down when they're working from home. It's actually increasing. Of course, what you have to focus on is communication, is how you align. There are probably more meetings necessary. There might be probably a bit more stricter frameworks, as you need to communicate with the people. So this is the focus here on. But I definitely think you would not do yourself a favor asking especially tech talents to come to the office 5 days a week.
Yes, that's also what is my experience, and also what I see is happening on Croatian talent market. And the survey we are conducting right now is also, in alignment with that line of thought, because we actually learned from the survey that almost 70% of tech talent wouldn't even consider the offer that is not including the possibility to work remotely or work from home. So this is a huge pool of talents that the company can actually lose from the site just because they're not offering that opportunity. And I think it's especially hard for tech talent to not want it, because, as Alexandra said, during the corona crisis and pandemic, we all learned to work that way, and we liked it because there is no commute. There is a better sense of work-life balance. You can do your own lunch at home. You can better care for your elderly pets or kids. So there are a lot of benefits from working from home, and this is a huge benefit for employees. And most employers are aware that it's a must-have today. It's a default, something that it should be on the top of your list of benefits. I don't think that in the few years, or maybe even sooner, it will even become, it will still be a benefit. It's something that's like equipment, like you get laptop, you get a monitor and things like that. The same way people are going to perceive the opportunity to work from home. Something that we expect, something that we want, and that we highly appreciate from employers. And for myself, I can also share my individual. I would also not work for an employer that makes me come to the office just because, Yeah, sometimes when we do have some team meetings, when we have some brainstorming sessions, when there is a sensible feedback that has to be communicated, yeah, that makes sense. But just to do my focus work individually with my own thoughts and with my own laptop, it doesn't really make sense to sit at the office every day.
Yeah, and it's confirmed by two comments that I see in the chat. It's a pain to make people come to the office, and also the second one is elaborating a little bit on that one. It's a pain to let them know from one day to the other day that they have to. So it's a lot about communication. Business, the business reasons are different from the people's reason, but we have to somehow meet them.
Yeah, and I mean, there will always be necessities to come to the office, and I think it's, if geographically it's possible, then also explain to the people, again, transparency and communication. Why is it important? Maybe some sprint planning makes absolutely sense, even for a tech team. Hey, make it in person, it's fine. So if the possibility is there and it's not too much effort, like I'm talking about traveling 200 to 300 kilometers, if it's not too much effort, bring the people together. It will also create big advantages, but not for everything. Like make them understand why it's better. Make them understand. And I think that the feeling about that might be a completely different one from the tech talent, instead of just saying, hey, you have to come now 3 days a week. If you understand it or not, we don't care, but just come. I think that's here the point. Make the office attractive so they want to come. That's the first point. And the other point is also, there are definitely workshops, plannings, whatever. Justified reasons that it makes sense and people are more effective and productive together in person, but make them understand why it's like that, and then they will also not have a bad emotion towards that, and that they will not travel to the office with a bad feeling in their gut about like, oh my god, they just forced me now. But if they understand, that's a different perception.
Yeah, thank you both. We can talk for hours, but being conscious about the time. Just very shortly, some last comments from each of you, like a learning or something, a message that you would like to deliver. And then we just close this because, as I said, it can last for hours.
Well, my last message, definitely be authentic. That's something which is you can take that for so many things, but especially in employer branding, be authentic. I think authenticity, sorry for my tongue breaker, authenticity is key.
Okay, thank you, Alexandra. Jelena, what would be yours?
Adding to authenticity, I would add be brave, because the point of employer branding is to be different, to differentiate, to not be like anyone else on the talent market, So I think that companies should be more brave to show who they really are, how they work, what is their culture like, and to not be afraid that they will reject some candidates. It's a good thing. You don't want anyone to join your company. You want the certain type of candidate that will really thrive in the environment and the culture that you have.
That's amazing. Thank you, Jelena. And with this being said, I want to thank you, ladies, and I want to encourage our audience, if you have some questions that are not posted in the chat, or if something comes to mind later on, just connect with Alexandra and Jelena on LinkedIn or other social media, whatever they're using. They are very responsive, both of them. And don't forget to block July 17th to 19th in your calendars. We are looking forward to seeing you all at the World Congress in Berlin, where 10,000 plus developers are going to meet in person.
And we will have very exciting talks from me and from Jelena and from Anna. So definitely recommend.
We can continue this discussion there live.
Absolutely.
Oh, I have other very interesting topics I'm very excited to share. So
nice. Thank you, Anna, for moderating.
Thank you. Thank also our audience participating here. Thank
absolutely,
you so much.
Absolutely.